Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When a battle-hardened veteran buys a quiet ranch to start over, he expects peace. What he gets is war, with a suburban HOA queen named Karen, armed with gossip, fake reports, and a drone. But he's not backing down. This isn't just a property dispute, it's a siege. I bought the old ranch on a Tuesday morning in March, during one of those Colorado spring snaps where the mountains still wear snow, but the wind already carries a taste of dust and sun. The property was a beast, 120 acres of untamed scrubland, a long-forgotten Victorian-style ranch house with boarded windows, a sagging porch, and a barn that looked like it might fall if I sneezed in its direction. Perfect. Just the kind of project I was looking for after 20 years of structure, chain of command, and deployments. I needed something real, something mine. Pulling up that morning in my retired military cargo truck with a 20-foot trailer clanking behind me, I felt like I was finally breathing again. The back was packed to the brim with my gear, generators, tool chests, sealed tubs of camping equipment, some surplus lumber, and my two dogs, Mako and Dagger, panting in their crate. I had everything I needed to spend the next few weeks getting the place livable. It wouldn't be fancy, but I didn't need fancy. I needed functional. I needed peace. I backed the truck around the gravel arc that passed for a driveway, maneuvering slowly between patches of dry weeds and rusted fencing. No neighbors for half a mile in any direction except for one, a gated subdivision called Silver Ridge Estates. Their entry road clipped the northern edge of my property, a leftover from some agreement the county made back in the Reagan years. Didn't bother me none, so long as they stayed on their side of the damn line. I was midway through unloading the first generator when I noticed a white SUV idling near the fence line, just across the road. It was perched at that perfect angle of suburban suspicion, driver's side window cracked, phone lifted just high enough to be obvious, but not high enough to be an outright accusation. I squinted toward the windshield, caught a flash of blonde helmet hair and expensive sunglasses. She sat there watching, engine running, not moving. Didn't think much of it. I had work to do. By the time I'd offloaded half the trailer, moved in my toolbox a stack of ammo cans, the kennels, and 2 rolled-up solar panels, I noticed the SUV was gone. Good. Maybe she figured out I wasn't there to build a meth lab. I should have known better. About 15 minutes later, as I was unlocking the old side door of the barn, I heard tires crunching hard against gravel. Not cautious, not curious, intentional. 2 county sheriff cruisers barreled up the drive, lights flashing. No sirens, but their energy was all business. My stomach clenched, not with guilt, but with the kind of frustration you feel when your day just got hijacked by someone else's stupidity. Doors popped open. 2 deputies stepped out, hands near their weapons. One older, built like a linebacker in his late 40s. The other, young, twitchy, looked like he still got carded buying beer. "Sir, step away from the building. Hands where we can see them," the older one called. I raised my hand slowly, not making any sudden moves. "Easy now," I said. "This my land. I've got the papers inside. We got a report of suspicious activity. Possible theft of property. Someone called in saying you're looting this place." I blinked. Looting? Hell, I bought this place. Just then, I heard a female voice from behind the cruiser, high-pitched, nasal, shrill with false urgency. "That's him. That's the guy. He was dragging crates out of the barn. I saw it. It looked like military equipment. Could be weapons. He's not supposed to be here." I leaned just enough to catch a glimpse. Yep. White SUV. Same woman. Now she was filming, standing about 10 feet behind the patrol car, practically bouncing with excitement. The older deputy looked between us, then stepped forward. "Do you have ID, sir?" "In the truck," I said, motioning with a slight tilt of my head. "And I've got a folder with all the documents. Title transfer, bill of sale, even the damn notarized video from closing day." He nodded. "All right." Slowly. I walked over, careful and deliberate, unlocked the glove box and handed him the envelope. He pulled out the paperwork, browsed for 30 seconds, then turned to the younger deputy. "It checks out. Title's clean. Sale was 2 weeks ago. All official." Then, to my surprise, he glanced back at me with a faint smile. "You're McAllen." "That's right. You served with 2nd Recon?" "Damn straight." He reached out, shook my hand. "Sergeant Williams. Iraq, 07. Knew some of your guys. Small world." Behind him, the woman, Karen, I'd learn later, let out a noise like she'd stepped on a tack. "Are you kidding me? He forged those. I know this property. It belonged to the Millers. They were part of our community. He can't just move in. We didn't approve him." The younger deputy looked confused. "Ma'am, you didn't approve him? What does that mean?" "He's not a resident of Silver Ridge. You can't just show up with dogs and generators and whatever that thing is he's driving. It's disruptive." The older deputy turned. "Ma'am, this property is not within the jurisdiction of your HOA. It's a private parcel. Your emergency call nearly got someone shot." Karen's face turned blotchy, bright red. She started to protest again, but the officer cut her off. "You're welcome to leave now, or we can file a report on you for false statements to dispatch." She backed away, sputtering. "This isn't over. We have standards in this community." I looked her dead in the eye. "Good. Start by learning the law." She spun around, stormed back to her car, and peeled away. The deputies took down a quick statement, shook my hand again, and left me to finish what I started. The sun was dropping toward the western ridge, and the wind picked up sharp and cold. I stood there, staring at the house I'd just defended with documents and patience, and thought, so this is how it's going to be. The next morning started early. I was up by 5, thanks to my internal clock and the sound of coyotes yipping somewhere beyond the eastern ridgeline. I took Mako and Dagger for a walk around the perimeter, checking the fence lines and making mental notes on repairs. The property was wild, overgrown in places, but it had good bones, like an old war horse that just needed someone to ride it again. By 7, I had a pot of coffee going on my portable propane stove and was finishing the frame layout for the solar banks. That's when I heard the soft clunk of something against my gate. I looked up and saw a manila envelope stuck through the bars, dangling from a bright red zip tie. HOA stationery. I took it inside, unsealed it, and let out a short laugh that probably sounded more like a grunt. The letter was headed Notice of Violation, Community Standards Enforcement. It accused me of unpermitted vehicular presence, meaning my truck, storage of hazardous equipment, my generators, unregistered animals of potentially aggressive breed, my dogs, and disruption of visual harmony with non-compliant structures, which I guessed meant my entire property. At the bottom, it said I had 7 days to comply or face further action. No legal citation, no jurisdictional reference, nothing that even tried to pretend this held water. That wasn't even the best part. Attached was a second sheet inviting me to attend the next HOA board meeting to discuss resolution and potential membership. I stared at the paper like it might bite me. They were trying to get me to voluntarily submit to their HOA by threatening me. I scanned it, then tossed it in a folder labeled Idiocy, Active Cases. By 9, things got weirder. One of my contractors, a guy named Manny, called and said he'd been pulled over by a woman in a Lexus who demanded to know where he was going and whether he had a work permit. She followed him for half a mile and took pictures of his plates. He told her to back off, and she apparently started shouting about unauthorized labor on community land. I didn't have to ask who it was. Karen was back on patrol. I reassured Manny and told him to keep working. He was patching the north fence nowhere near the road. Still, I walked out to the ridge with binoculars just to see. Sure enough, Karen was parked again near the junction. She had her phone out, pointing it toward my property. I smiled and waved. She didn't wave back. By lunchtime, 2 more workers had complained about being photographed. One guy said she even stepped into the road trying to flag him down like she was some kind of self-appointed marshal. I started getting nervous, not because I thought she'd scare them off, but because this kind of harassment could escalate into something legal if she caught them on camera in the wrong light with the right accusations. So I called Helene Jarvis. Helene was a real estate attorney I knew from Denver, sharp as a nail and meaner than a cactus in August. I briefed her on everything. The false 911 call, the paper notice, the intimidation of workers, the pictures. She didn't even blink. "Send me everything," she said. "All copies, video from your cams, statements from your guys. I'll draft a cease and desist letter tonight. This is straight up trespass and civil harassment. You're not in their jurisdiction. They know it. She knows it." "Think she'll back off?" Helene laughed. "God, no. These HOA types never back off until they lose something." I spent the rest of the afternoon mounting more security cameras, 2 pointed toward the road and 1 over the drive gate. I installed motion-activated floodlights and put up new signs. Private property, no trespassing, audio and video recording in use, big, clear, and legal. Then I did something Karen wouldn't expect. I went public. I wrote a short piece for the local community newsletter. It was polite, fact-based, and very dry. I explained that I was the new owner of the old Miller Ranch, that the land was private and not subject to HOA authority, and that all work being done was permitted and legal. I invited neighbors to introduce themselves respectfully and by appointment. The next day, it went out, and that's when the Facebook firestorm hit. Karen had screenshotted my article, written a wall of text accusing me of attacking our peaceful community and arming himself against his neighbors, and launched a flurry of paranoid speculation about my military background, my dogs, and what exactly I was training for out there in the hills. I was called everything from a prepper to a potential militia leader. One guy from Silver Ridge even messaged me asking if I was planning to start a private shooting range. I told him no. But if I ever did, I'd invite him to be the first to try it out. Then Helene's letter landed. It was a beautiful thing, formal, threatening, and packed with legal teeth. She cited state statutes on trespass, defamation, interference with business relations, and unlawful harassment. She gave Karen 72 hours to cease all contact and communication, or we'd pursue injunctive relief and damages. It wasn't a bluff. I printed out an extra copy and stuck it in the same folder as the HOA violation. That folder was getting thicker by the hour. 3 days after Karen received the cease and desist letter, I figured the storm had passed. There was a strange lull, like the silence before a mountain thunderclap. My crew was working steadily. The barn's roof was halfway reshingled, and we were clearing out debris from the old stables. The solar rigs were up, the generator running smooth, and for the first time since moving in, I slept through the night without Mako barking at the fence line. Then, Friday morning hit like a hammer. It started with a call from Logan, one of my welders. He was supposed to be installing a steel support beam in the barn frame. Instead, I answered the phone to hear him cursing in disbelief. They put up a damn gate, Mac. Chain and padlock. I can't even get the truck through. I didn't get it at first. What gate? On the gravel road, that stretch near the subdivision, someone ran a crossbar across it, steel post on each side. Full lock and a sign that says, Private Road, Residents of Silver Ridge Only. I stared at the phone like it might offer a different version of reality. Then I threw on a jacket, grabbed my keys, and drove the half-mile up to the access road. Sure enough, there it was. A fresh aluminum gate, steel posts cemented into the roadside, chain link locked up like Fort Knox. The sign was printed in HOA font, their tacky logo stamped right at the top. And behind that gate was the only convenient vehicle access to the southern third of my property. The road wasn't paved, but it was wide enough for equipment, and it had been used for decades by the old owners, the ranch hands, the power company. I'd seen survey maps from the 80s that showed it explicitly marked as a shared ingress-egress corridor, legal term for don't block this jackass. I climbed out, took photos of the entire setup, and called the county sheriff. While I waited, Karen rolled up in her Lexus like she'd been waiting for a damn photo op. She parked right across from me and stepped out with a folded paper in hand. "You're trespassing," she snapped before I said a word. I raised an eyebrow. "On my own access road." This road was built by Silver Ridge HOA funds. The board voted to restrict use to residents only. You aren't one. I cross my arms. You do realize there's a permanent easement on this road, right? From long before your little kingdom existed. She smiled like she'd just heard a 5-year-old talk about taxes. That agreement was verbal. It doesn't count anymore. We upgraded the road. We maintain it. You'll have to find alternate access. I've got 4 tons of equipment that say otherwise. Before she could respond, the sheriff's truck pulled up. Same guy from the first incident, Deputy Williams. I saw the recognition flicker on his face like a dim bulb clicking to full wattage. "Morning," he said, stepping out. "Mr. McAllen, Ms. Woods." Karen jumped in before I could say anything. "Deputy, I'm glad you're here. This man is using our private infrastructure without permission. We've taken legal action to secure our neighborhood." Williams looked at the gate, then at me. "You file an injunction?" "Nope," I said. "Just welded in steel like they own the world." I handed him the servitude agreement, original, notarized, dated 1986. It was dry and ugly but airtight. Williams took his time reading it, then let out a low whistle. "Well, ma'am," he said, "this document gives him permanent, unrestricted use of this road for any agricultural, residential, or industrial access related to his parcel. That includes ranch equipment, vehicles, and personnel. Karen's lips pressed into a line that could have cut granite. Williams turned to me. Want me to supervise removal? I nodded. I'll call Logan back. Bring the plasma cutter. Karen started yelling, something about neighborhood cohesion and voting rights. Williams warned her once to lower her voice. When she didn't, he stepped closer and told her flat out, if she obstructed us again, she would be the one in violation of county law. Interfering with access to a legal easement was a misdemeanor. We got the gate off in under 20 minutes. 2 of my crew showed up, cut the welds, pulled the posts out with the tractor, and laid the whole mess neatly on the side of the road. I told them to be respectful, no smashing, no pettiness, just professional dismantling of an illegal blockade. Karen stood 20 yards away, arms crossed, lips moving, but no sound coming out. When it was over, she got in her car and peeled out so fast she kicked up a cloud of dust that lingered like a curse. Back at the ranch, I scanned the documents again and had Elaine notarize a copy of the sheriff's report. Then I wrote up a damages summary. Lost work time, labor costs, equipment idling. I sent the estimate to her that afternoon. Her reply was short. We're going to court. The day after we tore down Karen's gate, I expected retaliation. Not because I'm paranoid, but because I've dealt with enough bullheaded officers, petty commanders, and bureaucratic weasels to know that people like her don't just retreat. They dig in, they escalate, and they never admit they were wrong. I wasn't disappointed. It started with an envelope stuck to my mailbox. Again. This one didn't even pretend to be official. It was printed on cheap paper and taped shut like a ransom note. Inside was a single sheet with bold letters at the top. Community action in defense of Silver Ridge. The rest was a mixture of hysterical accusations and pure fiction. It claimed I was conducting unauthorized tactical training, that my military equipment posed a threat to peaceful suburban life, and that my aggressive guard animals had been seen stalking near HOA borders. At the bottom was a printed list of names, dozens of them, residents who had signed on in support of this community response. I stared at it for a moment, then snorted. About half those names had already introduced themselves to me politely in person. A few had even asked if I needed help hauling lumber. This wasn't a petition, it was a scare tactic. I tossed it on the kitchen table and headed out to the barn. Logan and Manny were already at work, but when I got closer, I noticed a pile of splinters near the supply trailer. The padlock was smashed, not cut, smashed, like someone had taken a crowbar to it. I checked the inventory. Nothing was missing, but someone had definitely tried to get inside. I reviewed the security footage. The cameras on the gate had picked up movement around 2 a.m., a figure in a hoodie pacing along the outer fence, then circling back. The image was too grainy for ID, but the posture looked male, mid-height, cautious. I forwarded the footage to Helene immediately and then drove straight to the sheriff's office. Deputy Williams met me in the lobby. I don't know if this connects to the HOA stuff, I said, but someone trespassed last night, tried to break into my trailer. I've got it on camera. He watched the footage, nodded grimly. I'll file it. Could be random, could be related. Either way, we'll patrol the road more often. Back at the ranch, I started tightening the perimeter. Motion lights on every side of the barn, game cameras on the tree line. I even rigged a tripwire alarm system made from surplus gear. Nothing dangerous, just loud as hell if someone stepped on it. By dusk, I was exhausted, dirty, and ready to forget about HOA politics. Then my phone buzzed. Elaine. They sent an anonymous complaint to the county inspector, she said, claiming you're building illegal structures and operating a commercial training facility without permits. Inspectors scheduled to show up Monday. I exhaled through my teeth. Of course. They also filed a civil nuisance claim in district court, she added. Karen's name is on it. That caught my attention. Wait, she filed it? Yep, her and the HOA board. It's shaky as hell, but it's still court. We'll respond formally and countersue. This is what I warned you about. These people will use every tool in the box. Monday came, and so did the county inspector. His name was Howard. Looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Nice guy, though. Apologetic, professional. We walked the property, and I showed him everything. Permits for temporary power units, the contractor IDs, and the original land use declaration that listed the area as rural, residential, agricultural, with no restrictions on private instruction or working animals. He nodded through it all. Honestly, Mr. McAllen, it looks like you're doing everything by the book. You'll get a follow-up letter, but I don't see any issue. Appreciate it, I said. Mind if I ask who filed the complaint? He gave me a sheepish look. Officially anonymous, but off the record, Silver Ridge HOA. Same handwriting as 2 others I've gotten this month. I thanked him, walked him out, and went straight back to the workshed. Pulled up the list Helene and I were compiling. False police report, harassment of contractors, illegal gate installation, trespassing, defamation, attempted interference with county inspections. It was getting long. She called again that evening. "I'm drafting the complaint," she said. "We're going after the HOA as a whole, and Karen personally. Intentional interference, defamation, trespass, and civil damages. You ready to light this fire?" I looked out across the land, wind rolling through the grass like waves. Light it. The lawsuit hit harder than I expected, even though I'd known it was coming. Helene filed it on a Wednesday, and by Friday, the news had already spread like brush fire. Karen's name was right there in the first paragraph, along with the Silver Ridge HOA, the board of directors, and even 2 individual members who'd signed onto the nuisance complaint. The charges were clear and stacked deep. Harassment, civil trespass, attempted interference with lawful property use, defamation, and obstruction of access via an established easement. It wasn't just a slap on the wrist, it was a declaration of war. The local paper picked it up almost immediately. Small towns love legal drama, especially when it's got that irresistible lone veteran versus smug HOA angle. The article included a photo of my property and a quote from Helene that made me grin. "This is not a gated community. This is a man's private home. The HOA has 0 jurisdiction here and no legal authority to dictate how Mr. McAllen lives on his land." Within 24 hours, the HOA Facebook group exploded. Screenshots found their way to me, Karen posting frantic updates, insisting the article was inflammatory and one-sided, accusing me of attacking a peaceful community. Someone else posted a poll asking if maybe the HOA had overstepped. Half the comments said yes. Karen deleted the post within the hour. Then the real fun started. My mailbox got hit again, this time not with a letter, but with a full printed packet. Someone had distributed it door to door around Silver Ridge, and now one of my workers brought me a copy. Title page, "The Truth About McAllen, What He Doesn't Want You to Know." It was pathetic. Misquoted news articles about survival training. Old LinkedIn screenshots, blurry images of my truck with military-grade equipment circled in red. There was even a photo of me walking the fence line with dagger labeled Armed Patrol. I laughed out loud. Then I stopped laughing when I saw the last page, a printed map of my property boundaries with problem areas marked. It wasn't just dumb gossip anymore. Someone had taken the time to surveil my land. That crossed a line. I called Elaine. "That flyer's actionable, right? If you can prove Karen or the HOA authorized or distributed it, absolutely. Even as anonymous defamation, it helps us build the harassment case. Send me every page." I scanned the whole thing and forwarded it. Then I printed 5 copies and handed them out to my crew. "If anyone sees someone photographing the property, get me a plate. Do not engage. Do not confront. Just log it." That same afternoon, I got a call from the sheriff. "Clay," William said, "you need to come down here." "Problem? Not yours." Karen filed a police report claiming she fears for her safety. Says you've been threatening her, stalking her, that you have combat dogs and booby traps on the property. Says she wants a restraining order. I blinked. "You're kidding." I wish I was, but the DA already knows the context. She's filed false reports before. We're documenting it all. Just watch your step. Always do. Later that night, I checked my cameras. Around midnight, one picked up a vehicle slowing near the edge of the property. No lights, just idling. It stayed for 10 minutes, then turned around and left. I sent the footage to the sheriff. The next morning, a process server arrived. Not for me, for Karen. I watched from the ridge with a thermos of coffee as the young man in a windbreaker handed her a thick envelope right at her mailbox. She flipped through it, then froze. And I swear, I saw her lips mouth the words, "Oh my God." She looked up, saw me watching. I raised the thermos and toasted her. 2 days after Karen got served, something shifted. It wasn't loud. There were no more shouting matches or false police calls, but the HOA's behavior changed. They'd stop posting publicly, stop flying off in Facebook rants. No more flyers, no new complaints to the county, no concerned neighbor visits to my gate. From the outside, it might have looked like things were calming down, but I know a tactical regroup when I see one. Monday morning, my team arrived like usual. Logan in his battered F-150, Manny in the red flatbed with the welder in tow. But they found something strange. The South Side Trail had been flooded. Not a broken pipe, not a spring surge. Flooded. The ditch that ran alongside the trail, one we'd cleared last week, was now blocked with landscaping stones. Someone had dragged heavy material into the runoff path and clogged the drainage completely. The entire access path was under a foot of thick, muddy water, too deep for the tractor to pass, too soft for the trucks. The only people who could have pulled this off unnoticed were the ones with access through the HOA gate late at night. I documented everything. Photos, timestamps, even the tread marks near the stones. One of them still had a barcode sticker from a hardware store in nearby Granby. I bought a bag of donuts and handed them to the store clerk in exchange for the camera footage. 2 hours later, I had it. Karen Woods buying 10 identical stones at 9:14 p.m., loading them into the trunk of her Lexus with a scowl on her face like she was planning to terraform Normandy. I sent the video to Helene. Her email reply was one word: perfect. We filed an emergency motion to include the sabotage in our civil complaint. Interference with infrastructure, intentional property damage, and reckless endangerment, because that trail was our only direct fire access route for the lower pasture. While Elaine worked on the paperwork, I took a more hands-on approach. We rerouted the drainage manually. I rented a backhoe, paid overtime, and dug a new ditch in 2 days. Not as clean, but serviceable. I made damn sure the new setup wouldn't be so easy to block, wider, deeper, with gravel lining and reinforced side channels. Karen would need a dump truck to sabotage it again. By Friday, the road was passable. But then came the kicker. A notice from the county's planning and zoning office showed up at my gate. A formal citation. Apparently someone had filed a report accusing me of unauthorized commercial development. Attached was a drone photo taken from above my property line showing the barn construction site and claiming it was an unpermitted training facility. Stared at the photo for a long time. It was high-res, taken from a commercial drone. You could even see where Mako was lying in the grass near the fence. He was looking straight up. I checked my camera logs. Nothing had pinged our motion sensors that day. Must have flown high. Professional. This wasn't Karen acting alone anymore. This was coordinated, calculated, expensive. I called the FAA's regional field office. They confirmed the airspace over my land was unrestricted, but if a drone operator used it to surveil without consent, especially for use in a civil complaint, I could file a privacy violation and potentially a trespass claim under Colorado state law. We added that to the complaint too. That night, I sat on the porch with a scoped flashlight, watching the ridgelines. Dagger lay at my feet, still as a shadow. The wind howled through the grass, cold and dry. I wasn't just restoring an old ranch anymore, I was holding a damn line. The hearing was scheduled for Thursday morning, but by Monday, the courthouse was already buzzing. The civil clerk told Elaine that the docket room had never received so many preemptive filings for a rural HOA dispute. Karen's legal team, a firm out of Denver she probably couldn't afford without tapping the HOA's emergency fund, had filed a motion to dismiss, a motion to delay, and 2 counterclaims, including one accusing me of malicious defamation. They claimed the damage to the gate we'd removed was irreparable, that I'd endangered public harmony, and my countersuit was a bad faith attempt to intimidate a concerned citizen. It would have been hilarious if it weren't so expensive. I showed up to court in boots and a clean button-down, left the plate carrier and Mako at home. Elaine arrived in a sharp gray blazer and combat-level confidence. Her binder was thick enough to stop a bullet. Karen walked in 10 minutes late, flanked by 2 lawyers and one of the HOA board members, a man who looked like a nervous accountant in a Costco tie. She didn't meet my eyes, probably smart. The judge, Honorable Louise Grant, a 50-something with steel gray hair and a reputation for zero tolerance, called the case without pleasantries. McAllen versus Silver Ridge Estates HOA and Karen Woods. Civil complaint for harassment, trespass, obstruction of access, and defamation. Preliminary hearing. Both parties present? We both nodded. Helene stood and launched like a missile. She presented a timeline of events starting from the first false 911 call to the gate, the inspector complaints, the trespassing attempt, the sabotage, and finally the drone footage. Each point came with documentation, video, photographs, sworn affidavits, even a signed statement from the county road inspector saying Karen personally attempted to restrict access to a Servian estate. Karen's lawyer objected. "Your Honor, the HOA is a private organization," Judge Grant cut him off, "and it doesn't own this man's land, nor has authority outside its recorded boundaries." Continue Ms. Renault. When Elaine brought up the flyer, the courtroom murmured. The judge examined it silently for a full minute. "This looks like a deliberate attempt to damage reputation and incite community hostility." Karen's lawyer tried to interject. "Our client was responding to credible safety concerns." Grant raised an eyebrow. "So she distributed a map of his property, labeled with problem zones?" Dead silence. Then came Karen's turn. She took the stand, visibly tense. Her voice was thin but rehearsed. "I only did what I thought was best for the safety of our neighborhood. Mr. McAllen's property was abandoned for years. When he arrived with military vehicles and weapons, we became concerned. I feared for the children who live near the boundary." Helene rose like a coiled spring. "Ms. Woods, did you ever once ask Mr. McAllen for identification?" "No." "Did you ever contact the county recorder to verify the deed?" "No." "Did you call the sheriff to confirm the legality of his occupancy?" "No. I acted on instinct." "So instead, you filed a false police report, physically blocked a legal easement, and then disseminated surveillance of his land." "I was trying to protect people." "Were you also protecting them when you blocked a fire access?" Road with landscaping stones. Karen paled. Judge Grant leaned forward. "Did you or did you not block a drainage ditch used for vehicle access?" Karen's lawyer stood up. "Objection, Your Honor. Pending investigation." Grant's voice dropped half an octave. "I've seen the video. She bought the stones herself. Motion to dismiss is denied. Trial will proceed to full discovery. I'm also granting the temporary injunction against further interference by the HOA on Mr. McAllen's property." She looked over her glasses at Karen. "You are not the sheriff. You are not the county. You are not above the law." The bailiff handed Karen a copy of the order. She looked like she'd been slapped in the face with a wet plank. Outside, reporters were already waiting. One of them shoved a microphone in my face. "Mr. McAllen, is it true you're seeking damages?" "Yes," I said. "And more importantly, I want my damn fence line left alone." The trial date was set for mid-April, but Karen didn't make it that far. It unraveled faster than anyone expected. A week after the injunction, Helene filed for expedited damages. Part of our case hinged on Karen's use of HOA funds, her spending for legal representation, surveillance, and even printing that propaganda packet. Turns out, she hadn't exactly cleared those expenses through the board. When the HOA treasurer, an older guy named Paul Kinney, got wind of what she'd authorized in secret, he called an emergency meeting. The HOA's own internal review exposed thousands of dollars in unauthorized expenditures. Karen had tapped into the General Maintenance Fund and Emergency Reserve for legal contingencies, but there were no board votes on record. Worse, some invoices were backdated. Sloppy work. Paul resigned the next day and handed copies of the financial records to Elaine directly. That was the last nail. The county opened an investigation. What started as a civil harassment case morphed into something uglier: misuse of HOA funds, falsified records, criminal misrepresentation, and worst of all, filing a false emergency report with intent to harass. That 911 call where Karen claimed a suspicious male was stealing from the ranch became the centerpiece of a criminal complaint. They arrested her in her driveway at 8 in the morning. I watched the squad car roll past from my front porch while sipping coffee. Mako stood at my side, calm as ever. Karen screamed as they cuffed her. I didn't flinch. The news spread in hours. Local papers ran the headline, "HOA president charged in harassment and fraud case." The comment section was savage. Some of her own neighbors started sharing stories. Turns out I wasn't her first target. Just the first one who'd fought back with lawyers and cameras instead of polite apologies. 3 months later, she stood trial. Between Helen's documentation, the sheriff's reports, and the HOA treasurer's testimony, it was a shut-and-close case. The judge didn't mince words. Karen was sentenced to 10 years in prison, 6 for filing a false emergency report that diverted law enforcement, 2 for financial fraud, and another 2 for criminal harassment. The HOA, in turn, was ordered to compensate me for damages, nearly $83,000. The judge appointed a court supervisor to oversee the HOA for the next year. Karen's house was seized to recover part of the restitution. Last I heard, it was sold at auction to a young couple who put in a trampoline and raised chickens. As for me, The ranch is almost fully restored now. The barn's solid, the roof doesn't leak, the fencing is new. I host a monthly course out here now. Fire preparedness, homesteading, some light tactical training for locals. Nothing extreme, just useful knowledge. Neighbors started visiting. Real ones. They bring beer, ask questions about soil or fencing, and laugh about how that HOA witch finally flew too close to the sun. At the end of summer, I hosted a barbecue. Whole families came out. Kids played by the creek. Dogs ran loose. People brought pies. It felt earned. Before sundown, I walked out to the gate and nailed a new sign to the post. Black metal, white letters. Private property. Respect is mandatory. Trespassers will meet the owner. I figure that says enough.